How did the creation of Gollum revolutionize CGI in the film industry? Why did John Rhys Davies hate his costume? And what does a walrus have to do with the Mines of Moria? Hi, I'm Dylan, and you're watching Awesome Movies. Get ready, because we're about to simply walk into Mordor. From story to screen, director and filmmaker extraordinaire Peter Jackson had quite a unique process to bring Middle-earth to the screen, and it all started with sketches and the desire to bring fantasy to life. The director explained, "A lot of people somehow think I've had a long-standing ambition to make The Lord of the Rings, which is not actually true. What I have had is a long-standing ambition to make a fantasy film." So Jackson tasked a team of artists with sketching literally hundreds of reference images to capture the look and feel of the film. Over 5 years of filming, the trilogy required a production team of over 2,400 workers, 26,000 extras, 64 miniature sets, and some epic makeup and prosthetics. It was an enormous project, but Jackson was dedicated. In an interview with Variety, he admitted, "I had to create the most believable world I could. The decision was to make it feel very historical, with the levels of detail creating the illusion that the viewers were immersing themselves in a real world. Of course, none of this would have worked without the most important ingredient, computers." Character building. At a time when CGI was in its infancy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy was a true pioneer in the world of cinematic marvels, and it's all thanks to Gollum.
"You don't have any friends. Nobody likes you. Where would you be without me? Helm, I saved us."
The ring-obsessed hobbit was initially supposed to be just a voiceover, but after Andy Serkis's impressive audition tape, Peter Jackson knew that a voiceover wouldn't be enough. He needed Andy, and so he needed to come up with a way of capturing live action with CGI, which had never been done before. Enter Massive, an AI program that was created for Lord of the Rings and that changed CGI forever. So, how does it all work? We're glad you asked. The program allows thousands of characters to be created independently and stores every single shot on a massive digital library for easy access. Not only did this make changing or duplicating characters much easier, but it allowed for literally any filmed shot to be tweaked or edited digitally. The characters in the program are based on models or puppets that are scanned before their skeletons. Muscles and expression are added digitally. Of course, this process was different for Gollum, who's a mixture of animation and acting. Gollum scenes were filmed twice, once in costume with the other actors, and once on a motion capture stage, so that all the digital overlays could be added without losing any of the realism. With so much work behind bringing these fantastic creatures to life, it's not surprising that the team responsible for this tech won an Oscar for it. Augmented reality, when CGI isn't enough. Part of the reason that the Lord of the Rings trilogy feels so real is that it relies on a combination of several techniques. In addition to the massive program and digital characters, the filmmakers relied on good old-fashioned makeup and prosthetics to really bring the world to life. And with over 26,000 cast members and extras, that was no small feat. Throughout the trilogy, the makeup department created over 10,000 facial additions, 3,500 pairs of hobbit feet, and 2,500 foam bodysuits. And not only were these a nightmare to deal with, taking hours to apply and heaps of ice-cold adhesive, but they were a major pain for some of the actors. Literally. John Rhys Davies, who played Gimli the dwarf, was actually allergic to the prosthetics that he had to wear, making him break out in painful rashes on a daily basis. The pain was so bad that it put the actor off auditioning for The Hobbit, because as he explained, "Really, I'm not sure my face can take that sort of punishment anymore." Of course, the process of transforming an actor into an orc or dwarf is quite complicated. After a concept artist sketches the character, head casts of the actors are taken. These casts are then sculpted into the desired shape with clay before a silicone mold is made of the clay and the prosthetic is created with latex foam. Once created, the prosthetic piece is glued onto the actor's face, or feet in the case of hobbits, and gets a coat of makeup to look natural. All in all, the process takes hours and has to be repeated every time the character is filmed. Talk about dedication. But it's not just the external appearance of the cast that requires attention. Peter Jackson is a stickler for detail. For example, because orcs have black blood, the director didn't think a normal pink human mouth would work. So the actors behind the orcs had to constantly rinse out their mouths with licorice mouthwash to make their tongues black. It's the little things. That's one way to look at it. Speaking of little things, one of the most challenging aspects of filming the trilogy was the scale. With a cast comprising halflings, dwarves, trolls, humans, and elves, it was quite a trick to nail the scale. Thankfully, this was made so much easier with forced perspective. Forced perspective is a brilliantly sneaky technique to fool the viewer into seeing a different scale. To be successful, it involves different scaled sets, actors, and props, moving camera rigs and stand-ins. And while the end result is amazing, it's quite a complicated process that often involves having to film a single shot twice and then digitally stitched together for the final product. But it also means that the right actor can be cast for the job regardless of their height. In fact, did you know that one of the shortest members of the Fellowship, Gimli, is played by the tallest actor? At 6 foot 1 inch, the actor behind the dwarf is actually taller than Viggo Mortenson. But this also made the actors' jobs more challenging. In fact, despite Frodo and Gandalf having so many scenes together, Elijah Wood and Ian McKellen hardly ever filmed together. The bulk of their scenes are actually filmed separately to maintain the illusion that Elijah is little. As McKellen explained, I hardly worked with Elijah. He was the main part in Lord of the Rings, but he's smaller than me, so we can never be together. And one of the most impressive aspects of this technique is that it can also be used for entire sets and buildings, as long as a detailed miniature has been created. Thankfully, Peter Jackson insisted that a miniature set of every location be constructed, so this wasn't a problem. Did you hear that? In order for the audience to truly be immersed in this fantasy world, the characters can't just look good. They need to sound realistic too. And when you're dealing with monsters and mythical creatures, this poses something of a challenge. Unless, of course, you're Peter Jackson. Apart from Andy Serkis channeling his inner hairball-vomiting cat to make the right sound effects for Gollum, an otherworldly orchestra was used for a few other characters. However, unlike the CGI, these techniques were pretty easy and dirt cheap. The Nazgul screeches that cause the hair on your neck to stand up are also a deception. The sound is actually just a recording of a bunch of paper cups scraping together across a tabletop. And what about Shelob, the giant spider? Her shriek is a mixture of a plastic alien toy and a recording of a Tasmanian devil. And finally, the kraken-like monster that loomed in the waters outside the doors of Moria sounded so fierce because its cries were a combination of walrus cries with a dash of some other animals. Where to from here? But it's not enough to have actors looking the part. In a fantasy world like Lord of the Rings, having the right location is everything. Despite it being common knowledge that the trilogy was filmed in New Zealand, fans may be surprised to discover that several of the locations in the films are not the result of a computer program, but of Mother Nature and a little help. Surprisingly, the first location that was established for the film was Hobbiton, which started taking shape a full year before filming commenced in order for the town to look natural, which meant that veggie gardens and lawns had to be planted early to look established in the shots. But New Zealand's varied topography meant that many of the locations could be filmed without too many digital additions. With a little editing, Tongariro National Park was transformed into the gloomy and barren Mordor. Similarly, Mount Doom was filmed on Mount Ngauruhoe, an active volcano in New Zealand that's erupted about 70 times since the 1890s. Thankfully, none of these eruptions occurred while filming. In addition, the Shire was created in the town of Matamata, while the Anduin River was filmed at Kawaro Gorge, with the CGI addition of the massive Pillars of the Kings. Overall, 8 additional national parks and creeks were used to create Middle-earth, which were filmed over 274 days. Of course, there were also sets that couldn't be created digitally or filmed on location, most notably Isengard. Thankfully, there was an easy solution for the fortress. It was made of styrofoam. Unfortunately, this presented its own problems. The model kept blowing away in the wind. All's fair in love and war. The various battle scenes scattered throughout the trilogy not only had to look spectacular, but they had to create a certain atmosphere. Jackson wanted them to be gloomy, high action, and dramatic. But they also had to sound like real battles. And for this, the director relied on a surprisingly non-bloodthirsty sport. The intimidating battle cries routinely chanted by the orcs were actually nothing more than a recording of a stadium full of angry cricket fans. While most of the battle scenes in the trilogy were made possible by the sophisticated, massive software, as well as ideal locations throughout New Zealand, including several old military training fields, each battle still required a huge amount of work. The scenes were only ready after a long process of careful character creation, choreography, and digital manipulation. Add to this the detailed atmosphere that Peter Jackson wanted to create, which required a lot of fake rain and snow, and you get some of the greatest war scenes in cinematic history. Not only did the series' most notorious conflict, the Battle of Helm's Deep in the second installment, commence under a cloudburst, which was actually created by several large water cannons, but it was filmed entirely at night. Or rather, it was filmed over 90 nights, garnering over 20 hours of footage for a scene that was reduced to 39 minutes of nail-biting tension. What do you think the secret to the Lord of the Rings success is? Clever CGI, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome videos about your favorite films. Thanks for watching!